What's going on, guys? It's Greg here. It's Friday, October 11th, 2019. The weather's getting crisp up here in southeastern New York State in the Hudson Valley region. The leaves are already changing. People are getting ready for Halloween and different fall activities. It's getting really pretty. The leaves are getting really nice. The air's getting crisp. I'm waiting for the first big snowstorm so I can take my snowshoes out and walk around in the blizzard, and bring you guys some footage of that. There's some really spectacular blizzards here. So anyway, I wanted to do a video about my bug out medical kit. I think a lot of people underestimate the medical portion of bugging out, and everybody's focused on guns, knives, food, boots, things like that, the more sexy side of prepping and bugging out and things like that. But some of the least sexy parts of prepping, and I say this a lot, the least sexy parts of prepping are the ones that are most important, because if you think about all the effort that people put into firearms training, stockpiling ammunition, all those things, or whatever other sexy parts of prepping that people like to really focus on heavily, you're not going to use those things that much. And then some of the more critical things like food and water storage, medical supplies, a lot of preppers tend to neglect that because it's not cool, it's not fun, it's boring. And I get that. I enjoy shooting. I have multiple firearms. I love shooting. You see on my channel that I go shooting a lot. But medical is really important, especially in a bug out situation or get home situation. If you have a get home bag or a bug out bag and you plan on going somewhere to escape your job or escape your residence to get to a safer location, which is what bugging out is. I have a Prepping 101 series. If you don't know the differences between different prepping terms, it's if you go into my playlists and you look up Prepping 101, and I do an explanation of what bugging out means and different terms. I have a video on bugging out versus bugging in. But anyway, so without further delay, I want to keep this video quick. I want to keep this video quick and focus on, the main topic here, the meat of the video, and that's my medical kit. I'm going to share with you guys my medical kit that I keep in my bug out bag, in my get home bag, which right now is pretty much the same because I don't have a specific bug out location to go to. Depending on what the scenario is, I have multiple bug out locations where I could escape to from my current residence. I have multiple areas that I have planned out that I can go to depending on what the scenario is, and I think you guys should do the same thing. When you plan a bug out location, you should have multiple plans, multiple locations depending on what the scenario is. You may need to bug out to different regions, so you should have like a close bug out location that's, let's say, within 30 miles of your home that you can easily bug out to, or even just a couple of miles. It could be a small wooded area, it could be a family member's house, it could be a relative's house, a friend's house, things like that. You should have a close bug out location. Then you should have longer bug out locations that are further away, geographically separate from where you're living, so you're isolated from any regional disaster, but that's the topic for a separate video. Anyway, so this is my medical kit that I keep in my bug out bag or get home bag. I even take this with me when I go hiking, and I go into the woods, I go hunting, I go in the back country. So this is just a little, this is like a Cordura zip pouch that I got on Amazon. I'll see if I can't find the brand, but it's really nice. It actually has a YKK zipper on it. So it's really, it has a nice sturdy zipper. The key, you want to have a good bag to hold your medical supplies. You don't want anything that's cheap, so it's going to fall apart. As you can see, this is stitched really well, and it's that nice Cordura fabric. Hold on, I think my lens is a little blurry here. Okay, so I have this nice bag, and in the bag it's very simple. This is lightweight, it doesn't weigh much. This is probably, I don't know, half a pound to, you know, not even, this is nothing, you know. This weighs as much as a bag of chips, you know, like one of those you know, Lay's chips that you get at the corner store. You know, if you ever ate those when you were a kid or from a vending machine, that's how much this weighs. This has no weight at all, and it has all the main components that I need to survive for a couple of days. Now, this is not a long-term medical kit. This is, the use of this medical kit would be for the short term. It's not designed to be, you know, for your whole family. This is an individual medical kit just for you to carry when you're out in the field, whether you're bugging out, whether you're trying to get home, whether you're doing some type of security patrols after SHTF or reconnaissance patrols to gather intel. So this is your individual medical kit. You want to have one. You know, you definitely need some kind of medical kit. So first, the most important thing is gauze pads, and I have different sizes here. I have they're all sealed in a package. These are just basic CVS gauze pads of different sizes, and then I have some butterfly bandages here if I have like a more deeper cut, like a slice, you know, and I need to close it up and I don't have stitches nearby, and I don't really want to be stitching anything if I'm in the woods or something like that, unless it's really a bad situation. So I have a variety of different size gauze pads. These are 2x2. What's this one here? I guess I could open it, you know, to see, but I got a bunch of different sizes. I have adhesive 4x4 pads, then I have non-adhesive pads as well, that, you know, just basic gauze pads. You can never have enough gauze pads, you know, especially if you get a serious scrape or cut. You know, you want to be able to protect that, or a family member. I have a 4x4, so I have some 4x4 gauze pads. Some are adhesive, some are not. And then I have these smaller ones here. These are 2x2. You know, they cost a little bit of money, believe it or not. If you get these nice gauze pads here, they're a little bit pricey, but they're worth it. And then I have the butterfly bandages in here. So that's that. So, you know, gauze pads, you need some kind of gauze pads, you know, to cover up your wounds, okay? It's a really simple kit that I have here. Then I have tweezer for removing ticks. Where in my part of the country, there's a lot of ticks here. In the summertime, it's pretty much, if you were to just walk into like a forested area and some brushy area, you would probably have like 20 ticks on you if you didn't have any repellent. So you definitely need tweezers in case you got to pull a tick out, or if you have some kind of splinter, some kind of shrapnel, some sharp object that's embedded in your skin, you want to pull it out. Here I just have some radiation pills. I don't live too far away from Indian Point nuclear facility in Buchanan, New York. You know, I'm within the 20 to 30 mile zone of evacuation, I think. You know, so if something were to happen, I would be pretty, you know, I would be right in the line of fire, so to speak. You know, if there was any radiation incident. You know, I'm also not tremendously far away from New York City, so if there was ever any kind of nuclear attack on New York City, it's possible the fallout could come up this way. You know, depending on the prevailing winds, depending on what time of the year. If it was in the winter, the wind would probably blow it up north towards me. If it's in the summer, it would probably go to the south. But this is just IOSAT. I'll show you the brand here. I don't know if you can see the brand, but try to shake it out here. IOSAT, thyroid blocking radiation pills. So basically, if you guys don't know what that is, this basically just blocks your thyroid gland from absorbing radiation, because the thyroid is a hoarder of iodine. So because iodine is a very rare mineral, and you know, your body naturally hoards it because it knows that it's not, you know, a very common thing like water or something, or protein, right? Iodine is a little more hard to come by in nature. So our bodies are designed to hoard it. You know, our thyroid gland will hold on to iodine and store it in the thyroid. So that's the problem, is that when there's a radiation situation, especially a nuclear attack, or, you know, a nuclear weapons attack, or especially like a nuclear power plant situation where there's like a meltdown or some type of a release, typically this iodine 131 gets released, which is a radioactive version of iodine. And what will happen is your body will hoard the radioactive iodine in the thyroid, and then you'll get thyroid cancer. Your thyroid will fail, especially if it takes up a high dosage of radioactive iodine. It'll absorb it through the environment, you know, through getting exposure to radiation, through iodine 131 radiation. Your body will hoard that iodine in the thyroid. So what this will do is it will saturate your thyroid gland with normal potassium iodide. So this way, when the radioactive when you're exposed to the radioactive iodine, you won't absorb it in your thyroid, because it's already saturated with this. So that prevents your thyroid from failing. You know, if you don't know what the thyroid gland does, I mean, it pretty much regulates everything. It's your metabolism, your hormones. You know, if your thyroid gland fails, or you have a tumor, you know, or something happens to it, you know, you're in big trouble. Forget about SHTF and protecting your family, because you're going to be a casualty at that point. So get yourself some of these pills. These are for adults. These dosages are for adults, so you may have to cut the pills in half if you want to serve it to smaller children. You see, it says here, it has a table on how to take it. So typically what you do is you take one of these pills for every 24 hours, and you start taking it as soon as the emergency starts. As soon as you get word that something happened, you immediately start taking one of these every day, and it'll fill up your thyroid with the iodine, so it'll give you some protection. So that's pretty much it. So tweezers, iodine pills, radiation pills, gauze pads. Here I just have some, you know, rubber gloves, which, you know, are obvious why you need them. I have, how many do I have? I think I have 3 pairs. 1, 2, yeah, 3 pairs. So you want to have enough gloves where you have one for yourself, and then one for a buddy or somebody else, and then, you know, a spare. That's why I have 3. You know, you never know if you need to do some kind of medical procedure on somebody. You want to make sure you keep your hands protected, so you don't give that person more bacteria, and so they don't give you bacteria. Aside from that, these are very useful for also handling chemicals or toxic substances. They'll you know, provide a barrier from your skin so you don't get exposed. Here I just have a little packet of diarrhea pills. This is pretty much just Imodium AD. You can see here, anti-diarrheal. So this is just if, you know, if you're in a bug out situation or get home, you know, you're fleeing on foot, or you're doing a reconnaissance patrol, a security patrol, you know, you're out in the field and you're far away from, you know, your main area of operations, your home or your bug out location where you have, you know, real medicine. Let's say you get diarrhea, you know, you're bugging out, or you're doing some kind of security patrol, or you're doing a reconnaissance patrol and you're, you know, miles away from your bug out location, or, you know, you're doing a long range reconnaissance or surveillance operation where you've, you know, hiked miles away from your main location and you're trying to gather intel. If you get diarrhea, that could be a bad situation, because when you get diarrhea, you know, depending on what causes it, it's going to cause a loss of electrolytes and dehydration. You know, if it's just like a minor thing where you ate like some bad food and it'll clear up after a day, not the end of the world. But if you get something a little more serious, like, you know, some type of bug or, you know, parasite or something like Giardia, or Giardia usually takes a little while to kick in, but, you know, there's a lot of different parasites out in nature, Cryptosporidium, things like that. You know, if you're drinking a lot of water and you're out in the woods, you know, the chances of you eating some bad food or, you know, drinking some bad water, it goes up tremendously higher than it is during, you know, good civilized, you know, domestic situation where, you know, everything is refrigerated and, you know, you have fresh water every day. So it's always good to keep some of these, because you don't want to lose electrolytes. You don't want to have to stop and take a shit every 10 minutes. You know, you want to make sure that you know, you're preserving your fluids, you're preserving your electrolytes, and you're not, you know, stopping to take a poop every, you know, half hour in the middle of a serious crisis. All right. So I have two sections of those. That should be enough for, you know, a major diarrhea outbreak. Here I just have one roll of gauze. It's all sterile. You know, it's just a basic roll, 2 yards. You know, so here I could just roll my wound up with this. And these are for, you know, smaller wounds. These aren't, you know, life-threatening bleeding control. I have more stuff for that. I'll show you in a sec. Here I just have some basic Tylenol, acetaminophen. All right. Here I have, you need to have something for disinfecting. I have this antibiotic ointment, which is basically the same thing as bacitracin. And so you can apply this on wounds, cuts, burns, you know, blisters, whatever. It's got all the different antibiotics in here. You know, some of these are actually work pretty good. In the old days, see bacitracin, neomycin. In the old days, before penicillin came out, and in some of the poor Eastern European countries during World War II, people used neomycin to treat, you know, ear infections. They used these old school topical antibiotics to treat a lot of stuff. So this has multiple uses. You know, it's not just for cuts. You can do a lot of things with this little tube here. And notice everything is small. You know, I'm not trying to bog myself down and have this freaking huge, you know, medical kit like I've seen on some channels where people have like these massive, you know, medical kits. So, you know, that's, you want to keep everything small. You know, you don't need to have a massive kit. You know, you're not going, you can always resupply at some point. So, so that's that. And then I just have this tape here, medical tape, 5 yards. It's not that much, but, you know, it's waterproof, so if I need to bandage myself with one of these gauze pads, I can tie it around and, you know, apply some of this to my wound. You know, let's say I cut my hand open or I get shot or whatever, apply some of this, get my gauze pad, wrap it around, and just do, and then I can carry on with what I'm doing. And then here I just have, finally, I just have my Visine. I don't have any eye problems. I have good vision. I don't wear contacts or anything, but you may want to consider carrying Visine. And the reason why is you may get stuff in your eyes, you know, especially when you're out in the woods, and these are actually expired. So I gotta, it's good that I'm doing this video because I gotta replace these because they're expired. So that's another thing too, is you gotta check your medical kits periodically. Which, you know, I should have done. So, you know, lesson to me. So Visine, you know, you may get stuff in your eye. You may get bacteria in your eye. You may get some kind of something that irritates your eye. It could be a chemical, it could be a bacteria. You know, the chances of bacteria getting in your eyes is going to be very high if you're operating in nature and away from the controlled environment of a civilized world. You know, there's always going to be something that gets into your eye. You're going to rub your eye when your eye itches. You know, your hands are always going to be covered in dirt and bacteria, and you know, sanitation is not going to be the best. So your hands are not going to be as clean as they are now. You know, because you're going to be constantly, you know, touching things, and you're not going to have time to just stop and wash your hands all the time. So if something gets in your eye, you want to be able to take care of that. And the Visine, it'll obviously, you know, help reduce redness and any kind of inflammation in your eye. And it also has some, believe it or not, it has like some antibacterial properties to it as well. You know, so if you get like some bacteria in your eye, you know, this can potentially kill the bacteria or flush it out. So that's pretty much it for the medical kit. So I'm just going to put everything back, and then I'll show you my trauma kit, because that's also part of medical. And the trauma kit is for bleeding. You know, if I get shot, if I get stabbed, if I get into a knife fight with somebody, or I get attacked by a bear, you know, and it bites me and I'm bleeding like hell. You know, whatever the situation is, for whatever reason I'm bleeding and I need to treat the bleeding and stop the bleeding. You know, you need to have specific medical items to deal with any kind of traumatic situations. You know, this medical kit is not for emergency. You know, this is more for treating a wound that's already been stabilized, you know. So like if you get like a scrape or, you know, a cut, and you've already, you know, treated it, the bleeding is under control and it's not life-threatening. That's what this medical kit is for. It's not for, you know, a life-threatening situation. But this is what you need for, you know, controlling bleeding. So here's my bug out bag. Let me see if I can't adjust the camera so you guys can see. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see. All right. Hold on one second here. Just gonna set up the tripod here so I can comfortably speak. Excuse me 1 minute. Hope you guys like the pumpkin. Okay. Alright, so now we'll move on to emergency medicine here. So what I have here is my trauma kit right here on the outside of my bug out bag, okay? You want this right on the outside somewhere where you can get easy access to it. So if, let's say, I get shot or I cut myself or whatever the situation is, I got attacked by a bear, I don't want to have to open up my bag and start digging around for stuff. You know, I want it to be right on the outside where I can easily get access to it. So all I would have to do is just drop my pack, and then I have quick access here. So the first thing you're going to see is here I have a tourniquet. Let me see, hold on. I'm going to bring the camera a little closer. So here I have a tourniquet. This is a cat tourniquet, which is you know, used by the military and law enforcement, and I have it on this pouch, so all I got to do is just pull it right out. And here's my tourniquet. I'll show you the this is the tourniquet you want to get. It's a cat tourniquet, and there are a lot of knockoffs out there, but this is the one you want. I think this is the Gen 5. I'm not like a medical guy. You know, I know the basics and stuff, but I don't know the specific model. Gen 7 maybe? I don't know. Someone's going to have to help me with that. But this is a tourniquet. You use a tourniquet if this is your last resort. You know, if you have arterial bleeding and there's no other option, then you use this. And the reason why you don't, this is your last resort, the reason why The reason why this is your last resort is because you have what the tourniquet does. If you don't know, it cuts off the circulation to a limb. So let's say you cut yourself. Let's say you cut yourself on the wrist or something like that. You put this above the tourniquet. You put this above the wound. So if, let's say, you cut your wrist or something, or you get shot in the arm, you put the tourniquet as higher. It has to be above the limb, it has to be above where the actual trauma is to cut the circulation off. Okay, so you're pretty much cutting circulation off with this. So, there's potential for limb loss, and amputation. So that's why you don't want to use a tourniquet unless it's absolutely necessary and the risk of limb loss is lower than the risk of death. The risk of death is higher than the risk of limb loss. So you want to make sure that it's you don't want to potentially risk losing your limb if you don't need to. So that's pretty much that. So you want to make sure your tourniquet is easy to get to. So I just have this. This is like I've done a review on this pouch here. This is a HSGI High Speed Gear Inc. Pouch with a condor tourniquet pouch on the side. It has molly webbing on the side here on both sides. Here's one side and then the other. And then here I have some shears. I have medical shears, okay? And these shears I can easily access and pull out. And the medical shears are for, if I have to cut through some clothes to access the wound, that's what it's for. Because, especially if I have like multiple layers of clothing and I'm really injured, it's much easier to just cut around the clothing and do that than have to like take off your pants and whatever. So here, this is where I have my the main, so if I don't need the tourniquet, if I determine that it's not a life-threatening situation but I still need to control the bleeding, then I go for my Israeli bandage. So all I do here is, you see this cord, I open up the pouch. So this is how quick I can get access to it. Just pop the pouch open, and here I have this loop. I just pull this, and it dumps all the contents of the pouch right out. See that? All right, and what do I have in here? I'll show you exactly what I have in here. I have an Israeli bandage, okay? An Israeli bandage is a very, is probably one of the best things you could have. It's a sterile bandage. It's kind of like an ACE bandage, and it's sealed in here, so it's sterile. And what you do is you wrap it around your wound, and you can tighten it and use it to apply pressure. So that what it does is it lets you seal off a wound that's bleeding without needing to use a tourniquet. Okay, because many times you don't need to use a tourniquet if you don't have arterial bleeding. If whatever happened, it didn't punch an artery, you don't need to go to the tourniquet, okay? You just need to put pressure on the wound itself to close off the capillaries and the veins. So that's where the Israeli bandage comes in. You definitely want to practice with these. You have a sealed package here. You just tear this off, and then there's instructions here on how to use it in case, for whatever reason, if you've never used it before or you haven't trained with it, or if somebody else needs to use it and they don't know how to use it, there's instructions right here. It's basically just a giant, gauze roll, is what it is, but it's flexible. It's like a ACE bandage. And so with the ACE bandage, it has a bar on it. I don't know if you guys can see here. It has like this bar. It's like a plastic bar that's sewn into the bandage. So when you wrap it around, you wrap it around your wound, you loop it through the bar and you pull tight, and it'll tighten the whole bandage around the wound, and it will seal everything nicely. So you always want to definitely have an Israeli bandage. To me, that's like a critical element of your medical kit. And then here I have some hemostatic granules. You know, this is, you probably don't want to use this unless it's severe, like a severe wound. There's also instructions here. You know, pretty much what you do is you pour this into the wound, and what this does is it helps control bleeding because it provides extra pressure. So if you have like a hole, or you know, something where you need, you pour this into the wound. If it's like a gunshot, for example, and you have like a hole, you pour this in, and then you wrap your Israeli bandage over it, or you could even use hand pressure. But you know, you use the Israeli bandage, and what that will do is it will seal off the capillaries and the veins much better than if you only use the bandage. And then here I just have some sealed rubber gloves. These are sterile and they're sealed. And I got these at liveactionsafety.com. They have a lot of good EMT gear in there, so definitely check them out. So that's pretty much my bug out medical kit. So like I said, this is my trauma kit. It's on the outside, so I have easy access to it. And then here I have my, you know, boo-boo kit, I guess you could say. You know, but I would say the critical elements is your Israeli bandage is critical, and your tourniquet is critical. Definitely don't want to use a tourniquet unless you know what you're doing, and you know how to use it and when to use it. And another thing with the tourniquets that a lot of people don't realize is that you can actually release them. You know, you don't have to keep it clamped all the time. If you want to preserve the limb, you know, and like I said, I'm not an EMT, I'm not a doctor, but you know, I've done a lot of research, and what you can do is the old school way of doing it was releasing the tourniquet. You know, every periodically you want to release the tourniquet so it lets some blood go back into the limb. So depending on, you know, the severity of the wound, you can do that. You know, you can release the tourniquet periodically, so this way you preserve the limb. You know, so, and that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions or comments, you know, or suggestions, any additional information you want to add, please do so in the comments. Be respectful. You know, respect my time, respect other people's time. You know, don't post any insulting or negative comments, or I'm just going to delete them and block you. You know, I spent my free time to do this video to bring you guys some information. So, you know, just understand that I'm not getting paid to do this. This is for free. I'm giving you guys free advice. I'm sharing my you know, knowledge and expertise.